So the first thing I want to start out with is expectations. Expectations matter so much, not only for behavior, but also what we expect our students to be capable of in learning. We're talking about trying our best as a professional to serve a student, and the majority of our students, we have to believe that a student is capable of learning and behaving. So know that it should be a professional expectation for yourself to suppose that they're going to be successful and to believe strongly that they're going to be successful. It is really important that you have some sort of classroom management plan. Fail to plan, plan to fail. If we don't have a plan for how we're going to handle behaviors, then we're going to be trying to figure out how we're going to handle those behaviors as they're happening. Doesn't mean that we can't figure it out in the moment, and sometimes that's required of us. But if we have a plan for how we're going to handle that, it's less stressful for us and more likely that we're going to come up with a solution quicker and bring order back to what's happening. Classroom management plan should be setting you and your students up for success. You should think of classroom management not as a punishment or a way to control behavior, but as guidelines and structure and expectations that are going to help you feel successful as a teacher, and it's going to help students feel successful in their learning and also in the space that they're existing in with you. So try to think of it from a positive mindset, because even the way we think about something is going to be felt by our kids, whether we are articulating that or not. All right, some ways to create positive energy or a positive environment. Some simple things to do. Greeting students at the door. This is something that has been proven in multiple studies, that just eye contact, maybe a handshake, or some kind of like interaction with your students as they're coming in the door sets the tone for what you're doing. You do not have to stand there and have a conversation with every kid that walks in the classroom, but just, hey, how's it going? Glad to see you today. What's up? And if you know about that kid, how was the band contest? How was the band contest? Watched you in the football game last night. Good job. Like, just those little interactions start building community and start building a positive relationship between you and that student before you ever have to worry about what's going on in the classroom. When you're in the classroom, we have those kiddos that are performers, right? And sometimes their behavior that we feel is unmanageable is because they have an audience and they want attention. So if I'm giving the majority of my attention to kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, then that chips away at that audience piece and also the attention piece. If I'm giving very little attention to a kid who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, other than what I've established as, redirections and proximity and that type of thing, then I'm not giving them an audience. I'm not giving them a show for them to work off of. In the lesson was something they did that you enjoyed every day. So your class as a whole, now some classes, I've had classes before where, sixth hour was really a struggle. There was a bunch of kids in there that are really difficult to get on board with anything. But that may be 1, 2, 5 kids in a class of 25, 30. Were the other 25 kids doing what they were supposed to be doing the majority of the time? You should be focusing your energy on that. So at the end of the day, hey guys, loved our discussion today. You guys asked great questions. Hey, I really appreciated how hard you guys worked on your essays today. I'm really impressed with how quickly you picked up that equation or that formula we worked on today. Just a little note to end on a high note so that those 25 kids who didn't maybe get the same interaction with you that the 2 or 3 struggle bus kids gave you, so that they feel acknowledged and know that they did the right thing, and that's something that you are seeing and acknowledging and realizing that's happening. One way to start class, morning meeting, obviously if you're starting 5th hour, you're not gonna have a morning meeting, but have some sort of process for when they come into class. This could look like an instructional formative assessment, like a bell ringer that is actually tied to something you're learning or a lesson that you have, or it could be a low stakes prompt, just, you know, tell me about your favorite vacation you've ever been on. Tell me about a memory you have with your best friend that's like one of your best memories. It could be something that doesn't necessarily encourage a learning, but it does encourage community, and then also be willing to participate in those kinds of things. So if I give them a prompt, I already have a story that I'm willing to share. They're learning a little bit about me, I'm learning a little bit about them. I may not go through all 30 kids, but I may make it a habit to choose 6 kids to share what they wrote, so they kind of never know if they're gonna be called on, you know? And then also use names. I know at the beginning of the year is harder, because we have, 150 to 175 kids whose names we're trying to learn. Practice using their names, because you'll get to know their names better, and teach them. That's decorum, that's thoughtfulness to engage someone by using their name. Michaela, can you share with me what we talked about today? George, what did you think of Lindsay's story, or did you connect with anything that Lindsay talked about? And teach them to use people's names and how to communicate in a low stakes environment. I'm not grading you on this. This is just kind of those fundamentals of communication that we've lost a little bit, I think from COVID, but also just the internet in general. These kids don't have the foundational communication skills that we were raised with. I don't think that they do. And we can pin that on many things, I'm sure. But just make it part of your communication style to kind of help them build those soft skills. Having unique traditions or items or rituals in class. It could be a callback that you use. It could be a dinosaur, so that when people are talking, they have to have the dinosaur in their hand and they can throw it to someone else during a class discussion. Something that makes coming into your room different than being in someone else's room, because that builds culture and that builds community in a low stakes way. Be sure that students know that you like them. I don't know about you, but if I think someone doesn't like me, whether it's a colleague or a boss, I immediately am defensive. I'm immediately turned off to what they're talking about and what they're saying. I'm not seeking them for mentorship or guidance on anything. And so even if you don't like them, because that happens, that's reality, every kid we have isn't gonna like us, and I'm not gonna like every kid I have. They shouldn't know that. That should be something you talk to your spouse with at home. Oh my gosh, this kid, da 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 da. Not to another teacher, not to another student. Students and teachers at your school should not know who you don't like in terms of your students, probably your staff either. But you need to put forth a front of professionalism and also a willingness to show a kid that you're invested in them and you're invested in their success. Communication, cooperation, and collaboration are the 3 C's that you need to model for your students. Using classroom management and checking for understanding is a way to have a classroom management plan while you're also doing formative assessments. So again, if we're using a bell ringer, I have some examples of bell ringers here. Mistake discovery, that's like, I'm gonna use a tweet that a celebrity wrote and I'm gonna have the kids grammatically correct it. Or I'm gonna have a math problem on the board using a formula that we've learned and they have to solve it. It's something that's short, it's something that you're gonna go over together as a class, and it's getting them ready to think. It's warming up the brain. An anticipation guide or anticipatory guide, that could look like doing a scavenger hunt for information on a particular author, maybe, before reading a text. That could look like researching, see, I'm gonna be really bad at my math references because I don't have good math references. But maybe we're talking about a particular Pythagorean theorem. Well, why do we call it Pythagorean? Why do we call it Pythagorean theorem? Have them kind of go on an exploration for that kind of information. This is also using literacy in a cross-curricular way. So we're promoting having skills to research the correct information. We're promoting communicating that information that I've learned. And we're giving them a little bit of history with our math lesson. Have some true-false statements, and then have them rewrite the ones that are false, how they can work in pairs. We're working on that cooperation and collaboration piece. What do I know? What do I want to learn? How am I going to learn it? What did I learn? You can have a KWHL chart that you're going to use through the whole class period. And so you start with, tell me what you know about Edgar Allan Poe. What do you want to learn about Edgar Allan Poe? How do you think we're going to learn that information if we don't know it right now? And then at the end of class, maybe as an exit ticket, what did I learn today? What are 3 things that you learned today about Edgar Allan Poe? And then they turn that in when they're walking out the door. There's more examples. If you guys want to go through those later, we can. But I'm going to move on for time's sake. Teach great lessons. A student who is engaged is less likely to be a behavior problem. If a kid is bored, if a kid doesn't know what's going on because what you're talking about is above their head and they have some learning gaps that haven't been identified yet, they are going to figure out a way to entertain themselves. And that's either going to involve everybody else, or it's going to involve their phone, or they're going to be totally disengaged from what you're doing. You are not going to have every kid in your classroom engaged in everything that you do. If you do that, I want the book that you're writing, and I want in on the proceeds because you're going to be a millionaire. You have to be prepared to approach and address whatever is causing a lack of engagement with your students. On the front end of that, let's try to plan a lesson that's really engaging so it cuts back on the time I have to spend trying to figure out why they're not engaged. Needs-focused interventions are focusing on what can I do based on what this student needs from me right now. So I have this handout that I printed off for you guys that I think is a really great tool. Each page has a specific behavior. For example, defiance. Abusive language is in here, disrespectfulness, refusing to work, and it has, I've observed the behavior, so it gives you some examples of that behavior. Why might this behavior be happening? Psychologically, what could potentially be going on here? And then what will I do and what will I not do to address this behavior? So it gives you some strategies to think about how you can approach that particular issue. And you may want to take those strategies and kind of build them into your classroom management plan. And also, some things to think about that you don't want to do that might escalate the situation rather than de-escalate it. What are you going to do when a student isn't meeting expectations? Whether that's not completing work, whether that's continuing to be on a cell phone when you've asked them to get off of it, whether that's talking to somebody and you can't get them to shut up. What is your plan? You should have a plan, and there should be an escalation strategy in how you're going to approach this behavior. The number one thing that you can do is proximity. So if I see Mr. Reyes on his phone, and I come over here, and I continue talking about what I'm talking about, at the least, it's going to make him uncomfortable that I'm standing right here when he knows he shouldn't be on his phone. He's probably going to do this, or put it face down on his desk, or stick it in his pocket, because I'm standing right here. Just proximity can address a lot of issues. And you may have to move on and come back to Mr. Reyes later. It may be an ongoing thing, but we should be up and engaging kids as much as we can. Some lessons, some situations, we're stuck at the computer going through a slideshow, right? And hopefully those types of things are going to be alleviated when we get the tech that we're getting this year, where we're going to be able to stand up here and click through a slideshow and keep walking around the room. But proximity is going to be a great strategy and a low effort strategy to kind of deal with those behaviors. Then if Micah and Michaela are talking and I'm in the middle of trying to explain something, I'm going to give some proximity and they're still talking because they don't care that I'm standing there. I'm going to, in a kind way, hey guys, you just stop the conversation, please. Thank you. I'm going to walk around, and by the time I get to Micah, they're talking again. I'm going to say, hey guys, I really need you to stop the conversation. And then, because they're going to be defiant and they don't care that I've asked them nicely to stop, they're going to keep talking. They might even get louder. They may try to engage more people. I'm going to look for where's my root cause? Is it one person and people are responding? Is it just these two? Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I need you two to give me 30 seconds. We're going to step out in the hallway and have a conversation. This is slowly escalating, right? But if I remove the audience, then they're not trying to perform for anybody. I'm not shaming them, but I am clearly communicating that I expect them to stop talking. And then if they don't, I escalate what my response is going to be, which is contacting the parent. Hey, I just want you to know, since we've had a conversation and I've asked you to stop talking, at the end of class, I'm going to go ahead and call him. So just be aware that that's going to happen. And then I'm going to call home. I'm going to follow through and be consistent on what my plan is. Also, this is a prerequisite for an office referral. So if I know that this kid has been a problem with his talking consistently, and we're headed for a referral, I need to make sure that I can show a parent and a principal that I have made every attempt to address this in a reasonable manner, and now it's beyond my control. And I need some support from an administrator, and probably some support in a way that kind of removes that kid from that situation, or we start to address why this is such an issue. We have a behavior matrix, but if you need immediate assistance, always call the front office and ask them to radio a principal. Their phones don't always work. My phone doesn't always work in here. So don't rely on texting or emailing them. If it's an immediate attention situation, call the front office, have them radio a principal to come to your classroom and deal with that situation. Equitable is not equal, and I think it's a great idea to share this with your students. Every kid is different. Some of your kids are on IEPs and 504s, which means we have to, by law, provide certain accommodations for those students, certain modifications. We may find that a certain modification works well for a kid who's not on an IEP. Maybe this kid has undiagnosed ADHD and he cannot sit down, and he's not on medication for it, and he doesn't have any strategies to handle his ADHD. So I've decided I'm going to let Isaiah, when he feels like he needs a minute and we've had a conversation about it, he's going to get up and go to the corner of the room away from everybody else, and he's going to tap his pencil, or he has a fidget spinner back there, or he can pace, and he's burning off that energy. But it's just Isaiah doing that. It's not everybody else doing that. That's because I'm being equitable, not equal. I'm doing for Isaiah what Isaiah needs to be successful, but Michaela doesn't need that to be successful. Michaela's capable of being successful without that strategy, so I'm not giving her the option to have that strategy. And you can explain that to students without giving out personal IEP information, etc. So just make sure that they understand. If you see me dealing with someone in a different way than you, that's because that's what I need to do to help them be successful. What questions do we have? Or thoughts?
What about using some of the ACT, like questions from the ACT guides as bell ringers? Is that a good idea or no?
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a great time to kind of dissect the way that the question is written. Because, hey guys, even if we don't know the answer to this, let's look at the way that it's written. Do I know what analyze means? Do I know what this question is actually asking me to answer? And are there test-taking strategies that I can learn that might raise my chances of getting the right answer on this, even if I don't necessarily know it right away? So that is a great practice to have just a discussion about what does an ACT question look like? How can I be successful on this? And then talking about why is this the answer? I think that's a great strategy. Any other thoughts, questions, venting you need to do? We have to control what we can control. I can control my proximity. I can control my reactions to their behavior. I cannot control what they're doing. As much as I would like to, I can't. So I have to spend my time and energy having a plan for what I'm gonna do with what I can control. And then sometimes it gets to that point where I can't do anything else in this situation. And I think it's important to recognize that if I have the attitude that this is a behavior, this is not a bad kid, this is a bad behavior that this kid is doing, then when that kid has been referred and maybe they had ISS, maybe they went to the Hope Room, maybe they had some combination of those things, maybe they needed to talk to a social worker about something that's happening at home. When that kid does come back to my classroom, blank slate, we're starting over because that was a bad behavior, you're not a bad kid.
Okay, I found this so interesting.
Oh, good. I'm
Thank
so
you
glad.
so much.
Yeah. If you guys ever think of another topic that you would like me to address generally or with you specifically, maybe you have a specific kid that you're having an issue with, I'm at your disposal to strategize and research and figure out what works, because it takes time sometimes to deal with those tricky situations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
everything.
coming, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank